So again, thank you for being here. As we all know, people join a little bit late, and I wanted to do a meditation based on a very popular teaching, namely the Eightfold Path. And so I wish that people could join on right away, so that we could talk about the Eightfold Path a little bit, and hopefully we'll put our energy towards that, where whoever's going to be jumping on board here will do it within the next few minutes. Because I want to cover and talk about the Eightfold Path a little bit, something that some of us are familiar with. It's something that I cannot actually tell you how many programs that were based on the Eightfold Path that I've done. One of them was so extensive that it was at the Meditation Learning Center. We would start the 8-week, it was an 8-week program at the center, and when that was done, we would just start the next one again. So it was continuously rolling on and on. I think it went on for a couple of years. And of course, there had been a number of other Eightfold Path programs or courses that were taught in the Mesa area. And just about all of them all of them actually used this book. I don't know if you can see it. To me, it looks like it's backwards on the screen. But this is 8 Mindful Steps to Happiness by Bhante Gudarantana. And there's lots of different covers, but this is really the best book information-wise on the Eightfold Path that I know of. It's written so well, and it's so clear and easy to understand that if anybody's interested in meditation and interested in Buddhism at all, you should have this book on your bookshelf, and it should be all tattered up and marked in and used a lot, because it's one of those books that is a great reference. I was actually scratching my head and thinking, I moved some bookcases around, and I was trying to find this book. It wasn't in my office here amongst these books that are behind me. And so I went upstairs in another office area that we have, and there was a row of these. There's 4 of these in the bookshelf next to each other. And it's not like I'm planning on collecting this book, 8 Mindful Steps to Happiness, but that's just how it came about. And some of these are autographed by, this one isn't, I don't think, but they're autographed by Bhante Gudarantana, the author. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the Eightfold Path, and then I would like to do a meditation based on the Eightfold Path here. And I'm going to read a couple of, I want to make sure I'm not missing anything here. Monique, are you hearing us? Monique says, is there anyone speaking, or is there something wrong with my speakers? It's the speakers. Martin says, I can hear, the audio is fine, Monica. Thanks. Okay, great. She's got it. We're on board here. The Eightfold Path is the heart of Buddhism, I would say. As far as the teachings go, the direct teachings from the Buddha, the Eightfold Path really contains all of them in a particular, a particular way that we can look at it. And it's so important that it is a part of the Buddha's very first teaching, which is the Four Noble Truths. Four Noble Truths, we'll be talking a little bit more about it in a moment here, but first of all, the Four Noble Truths is that we suffer. And the Buddha said that we suffer because of our desires and our preferences, wanting things to be a particular way, wanting our life to be a particular to work out in a particular way for us, and if not, we get stressed out and we suffer. And he likened it to a squeaky wheel on a cart. So he called it dukkha, a Pali word called dukkha, which means squeaky wheel on a cart. It's that ongoing, agitation. And he said that life can be kind of looked at that way. But he said there's a way out of this. And he said the way out of that is through this Eightfold Path. And that thus this book, in many ways, there's lots of books about the Eightfold Path, but again, this particular book, 8 Mindful Steps to Happiness by Bhante G or Bhante Gudarantana, is an excellent book. One of my favorites. I'm not going to pull too much directly out of the book, but I just wanted to really point out that a lot of what I'm going to be saying is what I learned from my teacher and from this book itself. So the Eightfold Path contains our escape from suffering according to the Four Noble Truths. So it's the antidote to the suffering that we have in life, and it's a teaching that can be taken as far as we want. I think somebody could start learning about the Eightfold Path as a young person, pre-teenage, and work with Eightfold Path all the way up to the end of their life. You can work with these teachings all of your life, and they'll guide you in so many ways. And for that reason, many times a person will say, they'll call these steps correct understanding, or correct thought, correct speech, or different words that mean like right understanding or right speech, that type of thing. But I like to use the word skillful, and Bhante G does too in this book. The reason I like to use skillful is because it is a very skillful practice to know the Eightfold Path and to use it, and to use it in such a way that I just described, that something that we learn and we can continue to grow with it in a very, very skillful way. And the very first, before I get into the Eightfold Path at all here, I want to let you know that when I'm done talking about it, and when we start to do the meditation, I'm going to ask you perhaps what area of the Eightfold Path that you would like to work on in this meditation tonight. Because the teachings of the Eightfold Path is one thing, but working with them from a meditation standpoint is another. A lot of people would never think about using them in their meditation. They would just think of it as, like this, like a book, something to read, something to go, that's very interesting, but nothing to actually use in our meditation. There's several ways we can do that, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But the Eightfold Path is really eight teachings. We could divide them into 3 groups, and sometimes people find that easier to look at them in the first category of wisdom, and another category of morality, and then the third category of the practices, which is mindfulness and concentration. So the Eightfold Path, the very first 2, which are often called the wisdom aspect of the Eightfold Path, is skillful understanding and skillful thought. And so these areas are considered the wisdom point, where we actually have to dive in and do a little bit of studying and to understand these aspects a little bit deeper. The other ones where we're talking about morality, that's skillful speech, skillful understanding, skillful livelihood, and skillful effort. And these are areas in morality, which is a big part of Buddhism, but it's a big part of being happy in life, not to have this stress, not to have this dukkha or this suffering. And then the final two, steps 7 and 8, are again skillful mindfulness and skillful concentration. So, which are the meditation practices. And of course, mindfulness is really being aware of what's coming up at every moment, something that we can practice on the cushion or off of the cushion. Concentration is really designed to be a practice on the cushion where we don't move the body so much. And that's what the Buddha was referring to when he talked about skillful concentration in the Eightfold Path as really the heart of our meditation practice, sitting in formal practice and not moving for a period of time. Whereas we can still use mindfulness in our meditation practice, and we can do mindful-based meditation, which we do. That's Vipassana or insight meditation, and other types of meditations as well. But mindfulness can also be practiced off of the cushion. It's being aware of what's arising in the area of thoughts and emotions, and self-communication, noticing our triggers, and noticing when we're thinking about the past and when we're fearful of the future and that type of thing. Just really being aware. So awareness is a huge part of mindfulness, and that's why we're here, to do these practices. Now, I'm going to back up a little bit to the very first area of the Eightfold Path, which is skillful understanding. Skillful understanding is the understanding of two things. And so the very first thing that the Buddha mentions that we should be aware of and know about is the understanding of cause and effect, interestingly. And there's other, our actions and the results of our actions. And another word we could use for it is karma. Sometimes when we use the word karma, people go, woo, that kind of thing. But it actually is being aware and understanding that all of our actions of body, speech, and mind have a result to them. They have an effect to it. And it's very much like if we, I don't think I mentioned that here on Insight Timer. I was telling somebody about it the other day, but it's like if we roll a ball down a hill or on a hardwood floor, for example, and something would happen where we would have a heart attack, for example, and die. We would not be connected in any way. We wouldn't think that we're connected with that ball rolling, but after we start the action of that ball rolling, even if we're not in the picture anymore, it continues on. And so that action is a continuation. And this is an example that a lot of people understand. Some people kind of go, what? But basically, karma is not only karma from this life, but karma from past lives that have entered into this life. Karma that the actions that we use in this life could result in a future life, or the elimination of a future life as well. And so there's a little bit of a belief system involved, but karma can also affect the present moment. What we do today can affect our tomorrow. What we do in this 15-minute period could affect our next 15-minute period. We eat too much, we feel bad. But when we tell somebody we love them, for example, and they don't exactly understand what we're saying to them, and then a light goes on a week later and they go, oh, wait a minute, this person said they love me, there must be something behind that, and it changes that person's emotion. Well, that could be karma as well. So these are things that we have to look at. I just lost one of my lights, so that's okay. There's still plenty of light here. Another area of skillful understanding is the understanding of the Eightfold Path. And I just explained that. The Buddha said that we suffer because of our desires and because of our preferences. And he said that there's a way out of this suffering. And it's through the understanding of the Eightfold Path. Every area of the Eightfold Path. So that is skillful understanding in a nutshell. The second area is skillful thought. Skillful thought is some of the Buddhist teachings that we've heard, that many of us have heard before, and that's the aspect of letting go. So the aspect of letting go or surrender, and that has a lot to do with giving up the story of the past. Letting that go, and feeling the proverbial backpack just fall off the shoulders, right? And so letting go is very important, and that's very, very much a primary ingredient in our meditation practice. To be able to renounce, let go, surrender, all meaning the same thing. Another aspect of skillful thought is loving kindness, or what is called metta. Loving kindness towards ourselves and towards others, basically unconditional love. And the aspect of loving life itself is just huge. It makes the difference from a person that is not so happy in life to a person that is just overjoyed to be here. So unconditional love, or what is called metta, or loving kindness, or loving friendliness, is very, very important. And then compassion is another part of skillful thought of the Eightfold Path. Compassion for not only for others. So this is not a pity party or anything like that. But we're talking about compassion as in understanding others' sufferings in the same way that we want to have compassion for ourselves. We want to understand our own suffering. And once we do that, it changes the ballgame. It changes everything. It's as if a light bulb goes on. We get one of those aha moments. I heard a story from a guy the other day that he had a past life, or not a past life regression, but that's funny. It's kind of skipped my mind. He died and went into a he died and came back. Okay, and he said that there was kind of a understanding when he came back that he created this brain cancer that he had, and he really understood why it was there from the standpoint of being angry all the time, and not understanding himself, not understanding others. And once he saw that and understood that, he was filled with compassion and actually healed this type of brain cancer that he had. So he had died. He had actually gone on the other side. Then he came back and he got these messages. It was a very interesting story. So again, skillful thinking is letting go or surrender, what some people might call it, and metta, or loving friendliness, and compassion. These are two really important areas of Buddhism, and those are the wisdom teachings, skillful understanding and skillful thought of the Eightfold Path. And then we get into the morality area. And again, I want to remind you that when I'm done explaining this area of morality, I'm going to ask you what area. I'm going to kind of take a poll, and I want some answers. I'm going to ask you what you would like to work on in the meditation area. Would it be skillful understanding, skillful thought, skillful speech, skillful action, skillful livelihood, or skillful effort? And let me just explain the area of what is called morality, or skillful speech, skillful action, skillful livelihood, and skillful effort. In skillful speech, we're talking about refraining from hurtful speech that hurts others. We're encouraged to tell the truth always. What kind of world would it be if everybody told the truth? We'd actually know who to vote for, you know. We don't want to use words as weapons. We want to speak softly, as if we're, not harshly and not explosively to startle people or to try to manipulate people by yelling at them. And we want to avoid useless chatter. And that means basically not to talk about people behind their back, not to say something about a person if they weren't standing directly in front of you. There are times that we want to talk about a person we feel we're concerned about, like let's say a family member or something like that. So we want to talk about them and with another family partner, for example, and kind of get some things cleared up before we take our message to that person. But it's all in the vein of trying to help that person. It's based on loving kindness towards that person that we do that. So speak the truth. Do not use your words as weapons. Speak softly. Don't use useless chatter. And these are the areas of and don't use the words as weapons as well. Oftentimes when we speak to adults, we want to kind of pretend like we're speaking to a child. How softly and carefully we choose our words, or at least we should when we're talking to a young child. We want to do that, try to do that all the time. And if we do, chances are we're practicing mindful speech or skillful speech. Now, the fourth step of the Eightfold Path is skillful action. And skillful action, from a layperson's point of view, we talk about precepts. And precepts are something that when a person is serious about, they want to call themselves a Buddhist, for example. Not to join the Buddhist religion or anything, but just to feel more connected to the teachings of the Buddha. They might take the 5 precepts. And the 5 precepts are to refrain from intoxicants, to refrain from telling lies, another area that we just covered, to refrain from killing, to refrain from sexual misconduct. And there's one more I'm leaving out. See if somebody can help me. I can't remember. It's the area of the 5 precepts. I'm waiting for someone to help me out in the comment section. This always happens where I leave out one of the 5. We could come back to it. The 5 precepts are for a layperson, which are if we're not ordained as a minister or a monk or a nun or something like that, we are considered lay people. Ordained people will take well over 100. The nuns have more precepts than a monk does, actually. But it's over 100 precepts, very, very detailed. And so these are areas of skillful action that help us in the area of morality, things that we pretty much promise to watch ourselves very, very carefully in these areas of intoxicants, killing, to refrain from stealing, taking what's not ours, to refrain from sexual misconduct, and telling lies. Those are the 5. Telling untruthful speech. And those are the primary areas of skillful action. And just to remind you, all of these areas can be used as our meditation practice. Now, skillful livelihood is the 5th step. Thanks, Terry. Yeah, she says no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, no intoxicants. Right. Thank you. The step 5 is skillful livelihood, and that's basically our work. What do we do for a living? Is it good for us, and is it good for others? If we work in an ammunition depot, we could question ourselves, is this beneficial work? If we worked in a bar and sold alcohol, to people, we could question, is this beneficial work? And we really have to ask ourselves. We can't have somebody come up and say, oh, you're bad, you're sinful or whatever for being a bartender. It doesn't work that way. You might be the greatest spiritual bartender, and everybody that you give a drink to, you send them blessings, and you make sure that they're not intoxicated and on their way out the door when they're having that drink, making sure that they enjoy themselves while they're right there. So there's many different ways to look at skillful action, but primarily, is your job beneficial to you, and is it beneficial to others? Skillful livelihood. Skillful livelihood. And so we want to be very, very mindful in that area. Are we benefiting other people in what we do? Because if we are benefiting other people, 99.9% of the time, we feel good about ourselves. We feel good about what we're doing and how we are moving along in the world by being in the service of others, helping others. And then the 6th step is skillful effort. And skillful effort has everything to do with 2 areas, the 10 fetters and the 5 hindrances. The 10 fetters are a huge teaching in itself. These are levels of awakening, and the fetters are things that chain us to the samsaric life. A fetter is like a handcuff, or that when one prisoner is cuffed to another, like on a chain gang, for example, they would be considered fettered together. And the 10 fetters are things that keep us in this samsaric life, meaning that they keep us being reborn. And if we don't work our way through these 10 fetters, the Buddha said that we will not reach nirvana. We will not be fully enlightened, and we'll have to come back, to work some things out. So, but when we understand the 10 fetters, we also understand that there's different levels of awakening, different levels of enlightenment. I can touch on these very, very quick. It might help if I read a little bit here. Excuse me for the pause. The 10. I'm just going to go down the 10 feathers. These are the areas of a stream enter, a once returner, a non-returner, and an errant. But the very first area of the fetters that the Buddha recommended that we work on, this is all in the Eightfold Path. It's all in this book by Bhante Gunaratana, 8 Mindful Steps to Happiness. The very first one is the existence, or the belief in the existence of a permanent self or a soul. And what that means is that if we believe that our body, I had it explained one way, that we often believe, like a Christian, for example, will believe that a soul is a little likeness of us, a little likeness, like my soul would be a little Shane about this big that would transcend up into a heaven. It would look just like this, and I could relate to this, and it would be up in heaven. But the Buddha said that's not true. That this body is something that decays and constantly changes, but the aspect of our consciousness is something that never dies. It's ongoing. there's no birth of our consciousness, and there's no death to it. So if we believe that we will be reborn with this body, these experiences, and all of this, we are mistaken. And he went so far as to, when he explained this, he said the only thing that really goes from one life to the next, in a very, very simplistic way, is our karma. And he did that, he said that in such a way that people will really start the wheels turning and thinking it's the actions, and it's the inner part of us that would move on from life to life, or that would progress, to into a nirvanic existence. In other words, fully enlightened, like the Buddha. When the Buddha died, he was fully enlightened. He said, I will not be reborn. He said, I will not have another body such as this. And as far as we know, he didn't. And but he said, as long as, if we believe, and there's this is a huge teaching in itself, but if we believe that there is a permanent self, like a soul, that it is something that we should really consider taking a look at. Doubt in the messages of the Buddha is another fetter, to not understand his teachings and doubt his teachings. Another fetter is to believe that one can end suffering merely by following rites and rituals. In other words, lighting 3 sticks of incense in the morning and bowing to a statue of the Buddha, for example, and that'll be enough to become enlightened. He said, no, that doesn't work that way. Another fetter is greed for sexual pleasures, like this is gross greed, where we feel like we maybe even that we want to have this spiritual feeling. And even though it's a spiritual feeling, like let's say we meditate so that we can feel this euphoric spiritualness. And even though it is spiritualness, it is still the ego that wants that. Any kind of sensual pleasures, even eliminating the senses, is a part of the ego. Like you can imagine the ego saying, "Oh, I was so mad a little while ago, but now I took care of it. I got it out of my system." Even that is the ego. So we have to be very, very careful. Another fetter is quite one word, and that is hatred. Hatred is something that we really have to watch out for. Hatred for others and ill will, hatred towards ourselves, things that we've done in the past. All hatred is based on past actions. 5 more fetters that we should overcome before full enlightenment. Subtle desire to exist in fine material form. In other words, the idea that, or the wish to leave this world and just to exist in the world of the gods, or like an angelic world. Because that desire itself is, again, the ego, but any desire is a desire. So if we have a desire to change our existence, it's almost as bad as committing suicide, in a very, very subtle way, that we wish we could just get out of here and go on to a God realm, for example. It's a way of escaping. The subtle desire to exist in a immaterial form. The first one was to exist in a material form, and to exist in an immaterial form. Immaterial would be like in some concentration practices, for example, we can get so concentrated that it's as if we are suspended in space, and there's no body, no mind, no thoughts, no emotions. we're just suspended in space. When we come out of that deep concentration and we wish to go back into that formless realm, that is another form of desire. So we have to be very careful of that. Another fetter is conceit, for the underlying perception of self-identity. And this conceit is very, very subtle. I like to explain it as somebody eating their soup, and they see that there's a hair in their soup, and they think, oh, this is, I just lost my appetite. And then they realize that it's one of their hairs, and they go, oh, this isn't so bad because it's one of mine. It's very, very subtle conceit. You might have to think about that one for a while, but and then the last two fetters are restlessness and worry, and that is being tossed around by the past and the future, and ignorance itself, and ignorance in the idea and the understanding of basically the Four Noble Truths of why we are suffering, why we are here. But another area of skillful effort is the Five Hindrances. We've talked about the Five Hindrances here quite a bit, and the Five Hindrances are the things that keep us away from our happiness in life, and they also are the five things that disturb our meditation practice. And they are desire, and restlessness and worry again, anger, I'm kind of going out of order here. I'm going to back up a little bit. First one is desire. The second one is ill will or anger towards ourselves or towards others. And then another hindrance is restlessness and worry. A fourth hindrance is a sloth and torpor, or fatigue, mental fatigue, even a physical fatigue. Some scholars agree that the Buddha is also talking about physical fatigue, and then doubt in the meditation practice, doubt in the teachings of the Buddha again, having doubt in any of the things that we're learning. So these are the five hindrances. All of these teachings, I'm going by them so fast, but they are part of the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is really the essential teachings of Buddhism. If you want to understand Buddhism, the heart of Buddhism, we have to really go into the Eightfold Path. It's not hard to understand. It's not like the Ten Commandments. It's something that we should work with, and that's why I like to call them skillful, the skillful steps. Skillful thought, skillful understanding, skillful speech, skillful action, skillful livelihood, skillful effort. And then the last two are skillful mindfulness and skillful concentration, which are the meditation practices. And these are why we're here tonight. We're going to do a meditation. And some of it will be based on a mindfulness practice. In every meditation practice, there has to be a certain degree of concentration. We're losing time rapidly, so I want to get into if there's any particular area of the Eightfold Path that anybody would like to work with in this meditation, please write it in the comment. I would like to have some of you choose rather than myself, and I'm going to guide you through this. There's several ways that the Eightfold Path can be used in our meditation practice. One of them is to use it in a mindful way where we're just watching what's coming up, just very intently watching what's arising for us. And let's say we feel uncomfortable because of what somebody said to us, or maybe something that we said to somebody else, and it comes up in our meditation practice, and we use that information to look at and to use it within the area of the Eightfold Path, which would be skillful speech, which is a big part of it. The other way that we can use that we can use the areas of the Eightfold Path are through a contemplative practice, through contemplation, to actually be drawn into subject matter and to use that in this and to compare our lives with it. We have, so far we have conceit and we have restlessness and worry. These are small areas of the Eightfold Path. Let me again mention what the Eightfold Path is. It's skillful understanding, which includes the cause and effect, or what we call karma, or and it's also the understanding of the Four Noble Truths. Another area of the Eightfold Path is skillful thought. Skillful thought is the understanding of letting go, loving kindness, and compassion. And then skillful speech is telling the truth, not using our speech as weapons, speaking softly, using speech in a very kind way. Skillful action is our actions of basically body, speech, and mind. How do we use these actions? They have a lot to do with the precepts that we would take in Buddhism. And if anything strikes a chord here, please write it down. Skillful livelihood is our work. If we are not sure what our purpose in life is, if we're on the right path as far as work goes, skillful livelihood would be an area that we could work with. And then skillful effort is the area of the five hindrances and the 10 fetters. So like Adina, maybe that's where you meant by restlessness and worry, because that is a part of the five hindrances in the skillful effort. I'm sorry. Chuck says it's not specifically mentioned, but a major hindrance to me is arrogance, the ego. Yeah. The ego plays a huge part in all of this. Yeah, totally. Let's see. Let's work. We kind of have to jump into a meditation here, because that's why we're here. I don't want to disappoint anybody and have too short of a meditation. Let's make ourselves comfortable. I'm going to kind of follow Adina's suggestion here, and we'll go with restlessness and worry. In other words, this is a step 6 of the Eightfold Path, and it is skillful effort. And so please make yourself comfortable. Close the eyes, if you will. Find your cushion or your favorite chair. Try to find a place where the audio is easy to hear. Sometimes I begin to speak a little bit soft. I'm going to try to speak in a very monotone kind of voice, but not too softly. I would like to have you hear these words. Please bring your attention to the breath. Regardless of what we're using for a meditation object, if it's some kind of contemplative practice or something that we're concentrating on besides the body, it's always a good idea to start with something we're familiar with. And in this case, that would be the breath. Just feel the breath as it comes into the body. Feel the relaxation as you exhale. Just focus on the breath for a few moments, just breathing in, breathing out. Consequently, the Buddha said that the breath can take you all the way. I just like to remind myself of that whenever I'm doing any kind of meditation. It often feels as if using the breath is such a basic thing. And it is basic. It's supposed to be that way. It can be very boring, but it can be very interesting at the same time. When we look at the Eightfold Path, there's so many teachings wrapped up in this area of Buddhism. Everything from understanding the basic teachings such as Four Noble Truths, karma or cause and effect, what it means to have compassion for others and love and loving kindness for others and ourselves. The correct way to use our speech, what kind of actions we might be aware of, and how to better understand our actions and how they affect others. Even understanding our work ethics and our work in general. Does it benefit ourselves and others? And that is being skillful livelihood. And skillful effort, the sixth step of the Eightfold Path, is pointing out that we have to make a little bit of effort to become awake. The Buddha promised us that we will awaken at some point. It's really up to us. If we want to apply effort, we can actually speed up the process a little bit. And that was Buddha's primary teaching. He used his insights to help us wake up sooner. In so many words, he said that we will sooner or later understand all of these teachings on our own if we meditate, if we do these practices, but particularly if we follow these practices, including the Eightfold Path and what's involved with the Eightfold Path. And that's where the skillful effort comes in. One of the big parts or the understandings of skillful effort is the Five Hindrances. The Five Hindrances are greed, ill will, sloth and torpor, or like a dullness or drowsiness, restlessness and worry, and doubt. And they arise out of the fetters that we had talked about earlier. They flare up. They can be seen within our meditation practices, and they can be seen within our everyday lives. But the hindrances can be prevented in meditation through practice of concentration or by steady mindfulness. In other words, these areas of negativity can be really stared to death if we stay on top of them through mindfulness, or if we place our concentration on something that is so mundane, such as the breath, that any chance of the hindrances coming through are eliminated. And of course, this can be temporary, and you might experience it in this meditation. You might be experiencing it right now. But it is somewhat temporary in that what it does is liberates us in the moment to the understanding that there is something beyond carrying these hindrances around with us. When the mind lacks any of these hindrances, it becomes bright. The Buddha said that it becomes luminous and clear, like the moon in a dark night. And we spend that time without these hindrances in being complete, without any, we live moral lives. So as we sit in meditation, your eyes are closed. When I mention the word greed, does anything come up for you? Greed is the desire to obtain things. In our Western world, this is kind of a tough subject for many people because we're so used to obtaining things. And that's not necessarily the difficult part, but how do we feel when these things are taken away from us? Do we feel less in some way? Is there something that you want to possess so bad that if you didn't have it, your life would be miserable? Granted, some of these things might have to be tested. What would it be like not to have your car for a while, for example? Or the place you live? But greed is a trap in many ways. And it can draw us in and sometimes not let us go. From a Buddhist perspective, if we would die with greed in our mind, we would be reborn. In the same way, if we're meditating, we have a large amount of greed, hunger, or desire for something, strong desire, it can throw our meditation completely off. Interestingly, greed is based on the past and the future, something that we've experienced in the past and we want in the future, usually in the near future. Another hindrance is ill will. This is hatred, anger, resentment towards ourselves and towards others. Ill will comes from past actions. If we let go of the past, we let go of this hindrance. Now, the sloth and torpor, or this dullness or drowsiness, is another hindrance. It's something that people struggle with, especially newer meditators. It's a dullness of mind in that the mind seems tired, sleepy. The mind goes into fantasy. We wouldn't necessarily be able to determine whether we are thinking about the past or the future, for example. Our mind would just be in a fantasy state. Lots of things wouldn't make sense, like a dream while we're awake. Many people go through much of their days like this. And a fatigue of the body is another aspect. If our body and mind are very tired, meditation and our day won't go well. Restlessness and worry worrying is what causes our restlessness. So these two mental states go together. Neither one of them are conducive to clear thinking. We often think that we must think our way through something, but that's not the case. If we would rest the mind and let the mind settle down, any answers that we might be looking for would come to us. It's not conducive to clear understanding or clear knowing. And this hindrance is actually compared to slavery. A slave works very hard to please his or her cruel master because they do this because they're worrying about being punished. They're nervous about being punished. And the more nervous and restless the slave gets, the more they will worry and the more they will work for the master, never enjoying peace of mind, never enjoying freedom. And in that way we can be slaves to the mind. And we must learn to be able to let go of worry. And worry is oftentimes laced with fear that we're worrying about the future. If we are worrying about the future, that is another word for fear. The final hindrance is the hindrance of doubt. And this can be indecisiveness, not knowing what direction to go to, what direction to head toward. And doubt is often brought about by not taking in the information at hand and applying other things that we've heard or learned towards something that is happening in the moment, where we don't actually give it a chance. We don't want to have blind devotion. We always want to question things. But to have immediate doubt really restricts us from learning. If we doubt that we can awaken or become enlightened in this lifetime, chances are we won't. The mind is very, very powerful. So we have to remind ourselves that this practice really does work. It's almost like sitting in meditation and asking ourselves, am I doing this right? Should I be sitting like this? Am I breathing right? Is my posture right? And if that's the situation, we will never have a good meditation or a joyful one. But once we settle in and be open to the fact, eliminate any doubt and just, what we could say, go with the flow. When we can do that, then our energy starts heading in the right direction. And most of all, any kind of confusion evaporates. And we start to see things more clearly. Please take a little deeper than normal inhalation of the breath. Gently exhale. Another nice deep inhalation, kind of bringing you back into the room. Gently exhale. And one more nice deep inhalation of the breath. And gently exhale. I wanted to, at this point, ask you to open your eyes. First of all, I want to apologize for what I would consider a shorter meditation. Usually we do meditate for at least a half hour here. This one was a shorter one. I used a lot of the time to explain the Eightfold Path. If we do this again, maybe a lot of you will have this book, The 8 Mindful Steps to Happiness by Bhante Gudarantana. And you can read about the Eightfold Path and you incorporate it into your own meditations. And this is very much in the same way we did. Again, the other way that we can use the Eightfold Path in our meditation practice is just to sit in silence. And this may very well be the most powerful way to do it. Just sit in silence and see what comes up for you. And then incorporate that into the Eightfold Path. See how that fits into the Eightfold Path. Literally anything that we do or that we think about, that we say, that happens in life can be applied toward the Eightfold Path. Yeah. Thank you, Lyle. And thank you, Adina, for the suggestion. That was good. Oh, and thank you for Adina, thank you for the donation. I really appreciate it. I wanted to see if there's any quick questions. Best meditation ever, thank you. Oh, thank you, Linda. Oh, that's pretty cool. Very wonderful, thank you. Are there any quick questions? We're about 3 minutes over. I want to remind everybody that I am here every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock Arizona time, whatever time that is for you. I want to thank you for being here tonight, and I hope that you can join us in the future. We do different themes, different kinds of meditation. My background is Buddhism, but it's not always strictly adhered to Buddhism. Sometimes there's a little bit more, psychology and stuff mixed in there, but oftentimes there is a lot of the wonderful teachings of Buddhism and Hinduism and some other isms as well. So, okay, thank you very much, everybody. I love you, and practice daily. It will make a difference in your life. Do it if you're not doing it already, and I'll see you next week. All right. Namaste.